Ready when you are.
Cool, yeah. Hello. Here to talk to you about some 7 PR tips for developers, indie developers, kind of tips. This is kind of to take people up through to launch rather than beyond and ongoing community management things. That's also something that we as a company do, being a PR agency, but we're focusing on that kind of early stages for smaller teams and developers. One of these buttons does it. Come on. Come on. Yay! Let's jump on. I work for Big Games Machine. We're a PR and marketing agency. We're going to focus on, again, PR today purely because generally it's a good way of doing a good return on investment, but quite a low investment. Marketing's far more scalable, and I don't think we fit that into 7 slides, and even this is crammed in. I'm sure I can give more tips, but we'll keep it fairly short. I'm Alex, I'm the head of consumer marketing at Big Games Machine, or head of PR and marketing. I've been in games communications now for 17 years. I've gone through journalism, through to community management at Scopely. I was the blog marketing manager at Gameloft, and now I've ended up at the Big Games Machine as helping multiple agencies, or not multiple agencies, multiple companies, right from small indies up to larger studios like Ubisoft Mobile specifically, Lilith, and Scopely, to name a few. The list could go on. We don't just do mobile. I've realised I've just listed mobile studios. We do more. Before we start, I alluded to this, PR is just one part of the marketing mix. It can be a powerful one, it can deliver a great return on investment, but it is not a direct sales driver generally, and it's very hard to scale up. You have these kind of early stages, and this is why I'm focusing on announcement through to launch. After that, it gets a lot harder to gen up that interest. It's those big milestone announcements early in development, early in the process. So the first tip, and it's one that doesn't come naturally to an agency, but I think I've got to be honest about it, is that you can do it yourself. Obviously, that's a large part of why we're here, why I'm here laying all of this out. But the truth is, and it's all highlighted here, PR is tedious. It's about creating lists, it's about relationship building, building that press kit, sending hundreds of emails, following up, doing correspondence, updating that press list, making changes, and making sure everybody you're talking to is relevant. It takes a lot of time. This quote originally ended with the idea that of the 3 months of an announcement, it's normally going to set somebody back around $9,000 out of their own time if they're doing it. That quote's about 6 years old. I'd argue now it's close to 12, so I just took it out rather than updating it. But it takes a lot of time, and if you're doing it, it takes even longer because you're building that list yourself, you're making those relationships, and we'll come back to why that's incredibly complicated as we go on. The truth is the media do like hearing directly from the developers. The problem is that when you send out an initial email and you don't have that relationship, they're not necessarily going to open it for a number of reasons, which again, we will be looping back around to very, very soon. I think we can, come on. Yes. Never leave PR until the last minute, and marketing. It should be a thought early in the development process, partly to be working out who you're going to be talking to, who your audience is, but also to work out what that message is going to look like when you do start reaching out. It doesn't have to be desperately early, but the number of people that come to us thinking about PR 2 weeks, 3 weeks before launch is more than I care to think, more than I care to admit to actually. So have in mind what your USP is, start that process early on, so when you do come to push the market to PR again, it's a far easier process. You have it all in mind, you know who you're talking to, you have those audiences in mind. Who are you making the game for is what you've got to stop and think, and if the answer is me, then unless your kind of sales goals are 1, you should probably be rethinking that process at some point. Part of this is to get your timing right. It's not just not leaving it to the last minute, it's thinking about when you should start the PR process. We ran a game journalist survey earlier this year, late last year, one of the two. Around 150 media, from IGN, Polygon, Kotaku, as well as blogs. there's an overwhelming sentiment in there of how long they need to turn around a review. It's at least 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks is kind of the sweet spot. So you have to have a build that you're happy to go out to. It doesn't necessarily have to be considered final at that point, but you do need to know what issues the build has, what the reviewers should be giving allowances to, and ensuring you deliver on that for day one kind of launch of the game. Obviously, that does depend on the game you have. If it's a deep 4x RTS, you want to be sure that you've given people more time. You can perhaps get away with something shorter, and if it's early access, you can probably get away with shorter again, but make sure you give PR enough time to go out and get into the people's hands that you want to provide that coverage. And also within that, think about what your embargo date is going to be on that news. If you want them to be, all the reviews to be dropping at the same time, do you want that to be the day of launch? Do you want to build pre-hype? And a lot of that will be in concert with your marketing push. If you've got a marketing push that's going to drive any given element, you want to make sure that the two are working in concert towards that goal. So if your marketing is all going to land a week before launch, you're going to be driving for pre-orders and things, maybe you want the review to land at around that same point, rather than wait till the day of launch. But if you're small and you haven't got that investment, day of launch means you have this wonderful overlap where people aren't coming to the Steam page and finding wish list now, they can actually buy it. So think about what your budget's going to allow you to do to really capitalise on that. Another part of that survey is that journalists are incredibly busy, and that comes back around to this relationship. An agency will tend to have that relationship in place, and you may well have a relationship in place with a handful of journalists you've met if you've gone to events or been in the industry for a while. But some journalists are receiving 50 plus a day, and almost certainly those 50 plus a day emails are going to be with people that are the websites you want to reach. It's going to be PC Gamer, it's going to be IGN, it's going to be GameSpot. Good luck reaching either of those last two, by the way, but good luck. Just go with God. So you've got to keep that in mind when you're putting something out. The chances are you're going to have to really sit down and expect it not to be opened, send multiple rounds of emails if you want to break through that, or hopefully other people, agencies will have that relationship and help you break down that barrier. We all like to feel special. In this case, I'm referring to journalists or influencers. It can be anyone though. The simple fact is, if you're going to go out to them with something that's already known, they're not going to care. They like to feel they're getting something early. That can be that review key, that can be the news, that can be the video. And make sure that they have it ahead of time so they feel like they've got that kind of step in the right direction, and they're kind of ahead of the curve with the news, and they can feel like they found it before it's out there in the world. That also has the advantage, obviously, with larger sites, that they can feel like they have the news ready to go minute one as the embargo lifts. That's going to help them rank on SEO and get through the door and be ahead of most other people when it comes to where that news is going to sit on the site and on Google for search. So they want to feel like they've got everything really early in that process, and which means you have to be ready, you have to have all the assets cleared, press release ready to go out and in their hands in that time period. Don't just mail 1,000 journalists. You can go through, you can find that list somewhere, you can drag it all up, but if you were to send the same email and just a press release out to everybody, they're not going to feel special. They want to see their name. They want to see why you're asking them to cover the game. Is it based on the previous things they've reviewed, previous games they've covered? Is it based on a specific piece that you've enjoyed reading of theirs? If you can make it feel like you've engaged with their content, it's going to make them more inclined to at least answer you and let you know if they're going to be interested in covering it in the future, if they're going to be covering it this time, and just engage in that conversation. Even if it doesn't turn into something this time, that point of contact is going to help with future ongoing relationship building. And just make sure when you are doing that, that you're giving them everything they need in advance, all of those assets that they need to create that story. Come on! We have a lot of tools on our site that can help people if they are looking to PR their own game. It can take you through. I'm not going to read through how to cross the press release for all of this. You can go to the site and have a look at that. But what it boils down to is be concise, make sure you have all of that information up front. Again, if you've been considering from early on PR and what your elevator pitch and USPs are, you can put those all here. You want a clear headline of what is happening, and then a strong call to action early in that first paragraph, and then looping around again at the end. Tend to recommend around 3 to 4 paragraphs of information, maybe with one of quote. Doesn't have to be massively long. The longer something is, the more chance somebody's going to tune out during it. And when you do send out the press release, don't send it as an attachment, send it in the body of the email, but also begin that with a pitch, have a few, boil it down, do the TLDR at the beginning, have that relationship building email at the start to make sure you've got that in there. And then within that pitch, just make sure you've got all of those key points summarized so you're driving people back and around to the process of giving the message. There we go. Be creative to get noticed when somebody opens the email. There are many ways to do this. I mean, we also saw Cyberpunk sending fridges of beer to people. There's a lot of ways you can generate interest in your product. But if you haven't got a lot of money, you can get creative. We know we've done a good job when somebody talks about the pitch and the press release above the game. It's not great for the game, but at least we know we're doing well and being creative. We managed that with this. We sent out a fake confidential dictum press release from the Dear Leader, which was a game about, it was more prescient than ever, but about a North Korean dictator and kind of a management game around that. It gets the media's attention. In this case, there was a physical mailer, but we did this whole thing for like £100 to get it out. Doesn't make a lot of difference. The challenge with that, oddly now, is that as everybody's gone remote, people don't want to say their personal address. So at this point, post-pandemic, you're going to be in a different position with anything physical. You are going a bit more cap in hand. You can't just send it to future offices and hope people get it. So this is certainly something that worked for us in the past, but again, be creative, think about what you can do to engage beyond that. We worked on a game called Torn, and the AE on the account actually made every single, made it entirely of GIFs from the Natalie Imbruglia song Torn. So that was the entire thing that we sent out. I think it probably has had him caught in every spam filter since, but it was creative and it did get a couple of good responses from journalists. Discoverability. As I said, PR is part of the marketing mix. We did a discoverability survey recently of 1,000 gamers. What we found from that is they are now using more channels than ever to find the games. If you're looking at this, we are going to update this part of the slide. I don't think it's got Twitch on there. It certainly hasn't got TikTok. So there are more. There are also some that are outdated. Some that I don't even recognise on there, if I'm honest. But yes, what we found from that is that people are using not only increasing more, but they're also looking at more platforms before they make a decision. So we found probably around 3 or more kind of touch points before people decide to buy a game. Obviously there are things that kind of push them over the edge. If a celebrity or an influencer they follow makes that recommendation, that'll get them there faster, but they want multiple parts. So the PR is going to cover off maybe an organically placed coverage from an influencer, same from a story, a media story, but ultimately it's going to come down to making sure that you're spending more place to get more banner ad, Instagram ad, the journalist story, the review. Again, all of this is available on the Big Games Machine website if you want to look at the discoverability survey or the journalist survey. There's more insights in there. But user reviews are ranking high now. Game franchises people enjoy, still continue to sell, which I guess is all stuff we know instinctively. But within that, what I was incredibly fascinated by, and this is in the survey, is that Instagram rates incredibly high for game discovery, which had never dawned on me. We always look more at Twitch, TikTok, which while that does very well for being seen, doesn't do very well for conversion or click-throughs. But you just want to cover off as many as you can within the budget you have, because the more points of contact you have, the more likely you're going to have to drive those into sales. There you go. This one might seem a bit obvious. PR can't help a bad game. We can try and make sure that we play every game that we do work with. Ultimately, people have more paths now than ever to getting their game out prior to launch to make sure that you're refining the game you have to make sure it's the best it can be. Take the time, delay the game if you have the financial safe security to do so, and make sure that it's as good as it can be when it goes out the first time, because ultimately, especially when it comes to PR, you only get that first bite at the cherry. If you miss that, you're going to have to reset and start building that again, and that can be incredibly challenging. I think we can probably skip the summary slide, but I do have a secret one, which is the one thing you can't beat is a little luck. That can, if you get an influencer that comes along, picks it up early in the process, if that's an early access or beta, then it can skyrocket interest in that game, convert to wish lists, and ultimately there's very little PR can do to match that, but equally it's good PR that will often get that out there so it is picked up and it is seen. What I will say is if that happens organically and unexpectedly, if you're doing a play test and somebody picks it up, you need, and this is another reason to have PR considered, you need to be ready to capitalise on it. I talked to a prospective client whose game had been picked up by PewDiePie about 5 years previously, and their game still wasn't out. So they had this massive spike in wish lists, and then they hadn't been able to do anything. They weren't ready to build that community. They weren't ready to engage that community at that point. They were just putting it out as a play test, so they weren't able to make the most of that opportunity at that point. So that's where, whenever you're doing anything that's public facing, having the ability or having it in mind that in the amazingly good problem to have, we might need to find a way to quickly invest in this to make sure we can capitalise on success. And then luck can go both ways. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, we had a game that we put out, I think I got this right, on the 19th of January at 2 PM, the embargo was set to go up, 2022. Anybody know what happened that day? Microsoft announced it was buying Activision. So that announcement didn't go well. All you can do then is reset, try and rebounce off what you've got and look at what you've got coming up. Have multiple stages. Don't rely on a single beat because some things you can't help what's going on. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything from the top line on this. I do have all of these in a single document that I can share if anybody wants. I can give you my email address at the end of this. But thank you very much.